Russell, man, thanks for joining me for a second.
Yeah.
Pete Alonso, still no news.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen?
I think when you talk to people around the industry, there's a belief that Pete Alonso is a good player, right? But it's just how good is he at this point in his career? Like, is this the player he's going to be? I think sometimes when you're talking about a player in free agency, teams are projecting what you're going to be in the future. What does year 2 and 3 look like?
Yeah.
And for a lot of teams, I think they just think that Pete is who he is at this point. You look at a guy like a Kyle Schwarber coming off of a year where he's runner-up for NL MVP, hits career high 56 home runs, and is the leader of that Phillies clubhouse. That's a player that's looked at in a different kind of caliber than another slugger like a Pete Alonso.
Can I say, just real quick, I wasn't expecting this, but I don't understand why. Like, Pete, it feels like he has to fight for his position like almost every year, and he delivers almost, at least for the last couple years. Is it something that Steve Cohen, is he just doesn't want to secure Pete as another? I know they said they don't have to meet in person and all that. They want to give him a chance, but is there something there ever since the Soto deal that he just feels like perhaps he's not necessary?
I think it's less about how the Mets feel about. I think the Mets love Pete. Pete's been there, been a really great Met. They're going to retire his number one day. But I think when you look at how other teams view Pete, I think that affects the market more than anything else. Where if you're the Mets, it's good business to say, all right, we're going to go figure out what your market is, and then let's come back and have a conversation. And I think one of the things that Pete's figured out over the last couple of years, especially last year we had the qualifying offer, is like, I don't think his market is necessarily as strong as maybe him and Scott Morris have believed that it is.
Yeah.
Now with some of these teams that struck out on Schwarber, maybe they circle back to Pete, get some of that power in the middle of their lineup. But yeah, I can understand what you're saying, because you look at Pete Alonso as a player, run producer, hits the ball in the ballpark, right-handed power.
Still plays first base.
Right, so right-handed power, which there's not a ton of in Major League Baseball. So he does have value. But I think when you're looking at overall for his position, what he does, and if he's this player for the rest of his career or not, if he's hit his peak, I think that's what teams are looking for.
Excuse me. I agree with what Russell's saying. He's making a lot of sense here. He's basically essentially saying it's not that the Mets didn't necessarily value him as much. It might just be that the other teams may be valuing him way more than the Mets are valuing him, which makes sense. If you think about it, the Mets aren't necessarily saying we don't want Pete Alonso. They're just saying we don't want to have to pay Pete Alonso what other people are trying to pay Pete Alonso. I don't know if that's the way to move about your business, but hey, that seems to be what happened. And as a result, it looks like we're not going to be seeing Pete Alonso in a Mets. Well, it looks like we will not be seeing Pete Alonso in a Mets uniform this upcoming season, which is a huge loss. I feel bad for Mets fans right now. These dudes just lost Brandon Nimmo. They just lost Pete Alonso. They lost Edwin Diaz, all within like a week or two span of time. It's almost like the team is just, they said, you know what? We tried. We tried. We done trying. You know what I'm saying? We just gonna go ahead and let Juan Soto be the right fielder, the first baseman, the left fielder, the DH, and hey, maybe he'll close out a game in Edwin Diaz's stead as well. I don't know. I do know this much. I personally have a sneaky suspicion that the Juan Soto deal has caused a lot of this turmoil, and I have some facts to back this as well. Because let's remember, the 2024 Mets were the vibe, right? They were the vibe. Oh my God. Get to get it. All that good stuff, right? The 2024 Mets were the vibe. Grimace, okay. Sandals, okay. Concerts after the game, okay. Pitchers after every home run, okay. These cats made it to the playoffs after going 0-5. Remember that whole saying from 0-5 to OMG, right? But now it just feels like the Mets are in shambles, and I blame the Soto deal. Now, hear me out. I don't blame Solo per se. Although I think if I wanted to, I'd have some credence to do so. Because as of right now, it looks like there's trouble in paradise. And there actually have been articles written about the turmoil in the clubhouse with regard to leadership as the Mets go. So I'm going to go ahead and voice my opinion of why I believe that Juan Soto is single-handedly destroying the New York Mets. And it's not his fault. It's front office fault. It's management fault, perhaps. But Juan Soto definitely has something to do with it, and let me explain to you why. There was an article written not too long ago. It was in September. It was written by a man named Grant Young with the New York Mets on SI.com, and this is titled "Francisco Lindor's Blunt Judgment of Soto's Personality Turns Heads." So in this instance, we're learning somebody finally broke the silence on what was happening with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor, we could all consider, at least on its face, the captain, the leader of the team. But evidently that wasn't necessarily what was communicated to them. And before Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo was considered the captain. And so then you sign Juan Soto, who is getting the most money of anybody in the entire Major League Baseball. And there's this three-way tie between who's going to be the captain. Mindy, where you at? Doesn't somebody come in and say, nah, here's what it is, and it's what it's going to be? Or do you just kind of let them sort it out? From what the articles are saying, there may have been a little tension, but it doesn't come out so obviously. You kind of have to read between the lines. It wasn't a Pete Alonso thing. Pete Alonso, I feel like he just wanted his pay. He just wanted to get his uniform. He just wanted to pull up, and there wasn't no problems. In fact, he said that he didn't really have no problems with Juan Soto. He was quoted in saying this exactly. Pete Alonso says, he says, well, this is from an article. He says, when soon-to-be free agent slugger, this was from a few months back, Pete Alonso was asked about Soto's personality during a September 10th interview on the show, a NY Post Baseball podcast with Joe Sherman and John Heyman. He says, hey, he's just the same guy every day. He has been for me. I think he's just really quiet and reserved. He's focused and he just lives and breathes and eats baseball. That's really it. All right, well, you can say that. That sounds all fine and dandy. But if you read between the lines, he's basically saying he don't really talk to none of us. He basically saying, look, he don't do none of the group stuff. You know, it sounds like he may not do the team dinners or the team golf when they go out of town. It sounds like he just like, look, bro, I ain't with y'all, man. I'm with me. I am the Mets. And that's not good for rapport if you're trying to build team momentum, team rapport. If you want to kind of get that synergy, you know, kind of the way that it feels like, you know, teams like the Dodgers and some would even say maybe even the Cubs have, where they're just fighting for the love of each other. You know, some might even say that for the Yankees, but it doesn't stop there. That was what Pete Alonso says. What does Frankie Lindor think? What does Frankie Lindor think? Well, this is what Frankie Lindor said in an article not long ago as well. Frankie said, and this is a little bit more potent than what Pete Alonso said. Let's check this out together, right? So Frankie basically says, he's away from the world, Lindor said of Soto's personality. It's him, his family, his little group, and then that's it. He comes in and out. He shares moments with us, but he just said it multiple times. I'm quiet. I just want to come in, win, do my thing. That's just who he is. He's just in and out, and that's perfectly fine. Is